I'm Sammy Solina. KARE 11 has been there for its community for decades, and during that time, our journalists have witnessed extraordinary moments. In our new segment, Story Behind the Story, we bring out tapes from the archive and explore behind the scenes with their crews who were there. This week, we talked to longtime photojournalist Ron Stover, who has traveled all over the world for KARE. He even went to Antarctica in 1991. Here's his story behind the story.
Buenos Aires querido, cuando yo te vuelvo a ver, no habrá más pena ni olvido. El farolito de la calle en que nací.
It's the heart of Argentina, the pulse of its people. 10 million people live and love in Buenos Aires.
What up, Mama?
But it's the southern arm of Argentina and what lies beyond that truly attracts the eye and steals the soul.
I think if you've been to Antarctica, it's the sort of thing that's a life-changing experience, and you're never quite the same again.
But just getting to this place can be a life-changing experience. Ushuaia is the southernmost city in the world and just 3 hours from the heat and hustle of Buenos Aires. To people living here, this is just as much a part of Argentina as Buenos Aires is. It may not be as warm, but it's just as wild. From here, ships like Illyria can set sail to the bottom of the world, but only by forging through the Drake Passage, the roughest stretch of water on Earth. The water is rough and in some cases still uncharted, or even worse,
the charts are not correct. I have noticed a lot of mistakes in the charts.
Besides being home to 90% of the world's ice, Antarctica is also the windiest place on Earth. 20-foot waves and 60-knot winds were not uncommon on this voyage. Even so, the 70 tourists and scientists on board Illyria made the trip safely after 2 days at sea.
Right on the pontoon, nice and steady, and then and sit down as quick.
John Heinbockel is one of a dozen scientists who take time from doing scholarly research to lead these tourist expeditions to the Antarctic shore. Today, it is Half Moon Island.
So we'll be going in. There'll be a chin strap rookery that we'll walk up to first, and then some other options when you're tired of penguins.
But first, you have to make it to land.
Getting from ship to shore can be dangerous. Not only does our pilot Pano have to maneuver his way around these huge icebergs, but look at this. He also has to dodge hundreds of these small ice cubes floating in the water. Any one of them could damage the propeller.
But all the risks and all the worry are washed away once ashore. It's as if they've come to say hello. To these chinstrap penguins, people pose no direct danger. They don't see humans as a threat. This time of year, all they're worried about is keeping the kids warm.
You can see that with some of these birds when they stand up. I'm bigger, I'm better.
But getting too close could stress the birds, and their natural tendency then is to head to water, leaving their young unprotected, vulnerable to flighted birds waiting in the wings. But the natives seem not to mind the extra traffic all that much. Most of the visitors stayed off the main highways. Dave Parmalee of St. Paul sees the most from offshore, letting his mind soar with his subjects from a distance.
I like wild places, pristine places, and the subjects are out in the open to the sky.
Dave teaches bird science at the University of Minnesota. Here in the Antarctic, he mixes research with his love of ink and paper. He's been painting birds in the Antarctic for 20 years.
Oh, I've been painting most of my life, ever since I fell in love with birds at about age 8.
From his perch on board ship, Dave sketches life and tries to stay out of its way.
And maybe this is the last place on Earth where we can keep them wild and pristine. If we lose it here, we'll have to go to outer space to find similar areas.
Dave's wife, Jean, keeps a written log of what they see each day. There are easier occupations, but
You come down here and you fall in love with it, and you don't know why you want to come back. You just want to come back.
a few people do come here and stay.
It's most important because, oh, yes, she's my daughter, the most beautiful girl in the world.
Jerzy Rozmiarek will be here at the Polish government research station for the next year. So far, so good, but he's only been here 2 months.
So I'm talking this now and before winter, and I don't know what will be after winter.
For now, though, Jerzy is excited to be at the bottom of the world, living among the sleepy seals and the chilly chinstraps, lulled by the sound of the sea. Eric Olson, KARE 11 News, King George Island, Antarctica.
That's so cool that you got to go to Antarctica and do all that. First of all, being on that boat made me seasick for you. 2 days on that boat,
Yeah.
right?
2 days of this, like this.
I couldn't do it.
And you would sleep at night and everything would be on the floor in the morning. And you'd wedge yourself into the bed. And when you took a shower in the morning, luckily the water came up through pipes that were outside so that you could grab the pipes while you were doing this and trying to take a shower at the same time. And then you would go up to eat dinner, and again, everything was doing this, and the plates would slide across the tables, so you're always having to grab your plates.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
2 days.
Yeah.
And that's what people have to do if they
Yeah.
want to visit Antarctica.
Yeah, because it's the Sir Francis Drake Channel is some of the most rough water in the world. So yeah, it was 2 days, and the conditions weren't prime either. We had a lot of bad weather while we were there.
Yeah, I mean, it was the captain that you talked to, right? Was literally saying sometimes you can't trust the charts.
Right.
And you just kind of got to use your instincts.
Right. I'm sure now it's a lot better because of GPS and the way they've been able to map things since then. But back in those days, yeah, everything was paper charts. And so it was all laid out, and they would find that there were things that were not correct on the charts. And so they always had to kind of approach everything with caution.
Oh my gosh, I can't
Yeah.
imagine. And then you finally arrive, and I think you did a really amazing job of probably giving a little glimpse to the viewers of what it was like for you to see. Was it your first glacier that you've ever seen?
You mean the iceberg?
Yeah, iceberg. Yeah.
Well, we saw, I mean, as you progress, you saw more and more ice. And there was a lot of icebergs. I mean, they were pretty much everywhere. And the further you got closer to Antarctica, obviously you saw more and more. And some of them were huge. Some of them were, you could have landed an aircraft on them. They were so big flat ones. And there was one I remember seeing that had a big cave that had been washed out in it. And one of the crew said, oh, we could probably sail this ship into that hole, into that cave that was on the side of the iceberg. So one of the things, though, they always had to be careful of was not to get anywhere close to an iceberg when we were making landings. Because if
Because of it, we've all seen the Titanic.
Well, more so.
You know the ending of that story. You got to be careful. And he even pointed that out when they're on that rubber. I don't know much about rafts.
It's a Zodiac.
A Zodiac.
Rubber Zodiac.
It was a
yeah.
rubber Zodiac, and they were just like, yeah, we have to be careful of all these ice cubes.
It's more so that if you got too close to it, you never know when all of a sudden the ice underneath would wash away enough that all of a sudden the iceberg would flip.
Oh, that's exciting.
And would turn upside down. And we saw that happen several times, where all of a sudden the iceberg would just roll over. So if you were near it, you could get hit by the ice as it came back up
So
underneath
you can't trust the charts. You can't trust the icebergs.
Nope.
The captain is like, I don't know, we gotta just kind of use instincts here. And something that you said to me when we were watching the story about the penguins. Penguins, they're so cute.
Yeah.
The guy kind of mentioned something about, if you get tired of the penguins, we have other things, and you go, you're never gonna get tired of the penguins because they're so cute.
Right.
But you said their looks are kind of deceiving because they don't smell cute.
No. No, penguins don't smell good. The rookeries the nests are very, very close to each other, and they're not particularly good neighbors in that they will poo on each other all the time. So if you ever see a penguin that's nice and black and white, it's because it just came out of the water. Because otherwise they're pretty brown.
That's
For the most part, yeah.
That's something you don't know about
Yeah,
penguins.
with
I just thought they were
penguins, right.
these pristine, cute animals trying to hide from seals.
No, but they were very, very passive around us. I mean, the type of tourism that was going on at that time was pretty new, and they did not have much exposure to humans. So you could get up very close to them. I mean, in some of my shots, you could see I'm very close to the nest. We stayed away from them. We never got close enough to ever touch one, but they were pretty nonchalant when it came to our presence there. Other than the penguins, there is no odor in Antarctica. Other than the penguins, there's no smell other than, you know, the smell of the sea. So when we went back to South America and we were off at Tierra del Fuego, the smell of the flora was so strong. It was unbelievable because we had been sensory deprived of smell for so many days that when you finally got around flowers and trees and earth, it was really strong. You could just really pick up on it. It was amazing.
Wow. I mean, you really were in uncharted territory. That's what they mentioned.
Yeah.
You know, the piece that we can, you know, you can watch more of, and one of the pieces that you did for your trip, you talked about the tourism there and potential impacts, but it was unknown at the time. Right. We know now that there are impacts to tourism in Antarctica. I think when you went, there was a few thousand tourists. Now, the 2022-2023 season, there was over 100,000 tourists to Antarctica.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it's growing. People, you know, see a piece like this and say, "Hey, I want to do that," and you can understand why. But it's also this delicate ecosystem, which you touch on.
No, it is. It's a very delicate ecosystem, and the fact that we end up doing the piece more so about ecotourism was not the reason we went down there. We had originally gone down there to go do a story about U of M scientists doing research on krill, the very, very microscopic small shrimp. And that is the base of almost all of the ecosystem there for food. Everything kind of feeds on krill. So we were supposed to go down there and do the story with these scientists. Well, when we got down there, the weather was bad, and we only made about half of the landings we were supposed to. There were times when we were on the ship and be ready to go, and we could see, there was one place where there were dozens of walruses, and we couldn't get off the ship to go in the shore to see them. So we get to Palmer Station, where we were supposed to get off to meet these scientists. We had pulled in, and there was another ship there, another tour ship. And so the captain couldn't get over to the anchorage that he wanted. So he anchored where we were. Eric Olson, the reporter I was with, who I worked with a lot in those days, he and I were standing on the ship. We had all of our gear. They had put the Zodiacs into the water. We could see the scientists on the shore, and all of a sudden this big gust of wind came up and the ship lurched. And all of a sudden they pulled up the anchor, they turned the ship, they went between an iceberg and a reef and sailed away. And we never went back. So all that distance to go see these guys, and we were close enough to see them on the shore, but we couldn't get off the ship. So we had to then think, what are we going to do now for a story? We came all this way. So we were already planning to do something on ecotourism, but that became the main story.
And that's what we deal with in TV news all the time. You think that you're gonna go to Antarctica and do this story, and it probably took months to plan this trip. Yeah. And then you probably, you know, went to bed that night, maybe shed a tear because you weren't exactly sure what was going to happen, but you shifted and you changed. And sometimes we have to do that on a daily basis.
Well, you have to. I mean, you're all the way down there. Our biggest concern was finding anybody on the ship that was from the Twin Cities. And part of the issue was the gentleman you saw in the story there, the artist, who's from here, he threw out his back the first day at sea on the way down. So he spent the entire trip in his cabin laying down because he couldn't get up because he'd thrown out his back.
He threw out his back on the ship.
On the ship, on the way down.
Day one.
Day
And
one.
then was there when you were trying to catch all your plates during dinner, and he was just, this poor guy's on his bunk.
This guy's he's in his cabin the entire time. Ugh. And we weren't able to interview him till after we had returned from Antarctica and were off the coast of South America. And he was able to finally come up and sit on the deck, and we were able to talk to him about his art. But he'd been there many times. This wasn't his first trip. But so then we started searching, and we were able to find in the ecotourism story, which was the second part of the series, we were able to find a judge from St. Paul that happened to be on the ship. So that saved us, because then we had a local tie-in to kind of base all of our story around. But
what
everything,
did you do during dinner? You just said, "Hey, is anyone from the Twin Cities?
I'm not sure. No, I don't remember how Eric found him. I think just because it's a small ship, so you kind of got to know lots of people.
Yeah.
Lots of people.
I mean, it was clear that you got to meet so many incredible people. The scientists, the researchers that will take a year out of their life to be there. I mean, truly incredible, and that's awesome that you got to have that experience.
There were folks on the ship that were from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. There were a lot of different academics. There were also just a lot of people who just were tourists. It was a very expensive thing to do, particularly in those days. But yeah, no, it was cool. And then we did a lot of the smaller islands, and then at one point we did actually get off and set foot on the actual continent of Antarctica, which was like, all right, we actually can say we definitely set foot in Antarctica. And while we were there, a guy had brought along his paraglider and decided to take it inshore and do the very first paraglide in Antarctica. The captain wasn't very happy about that.
Things clearly with this trip didn't always go as planned, right?
Yeah, no, things did not go as planned for sure. But that's part of being in the news business, is you have to roll with it. And we got our first landing was where this Polish station was. And we really had no idea that that's where our destination was going to be. And at first, Eric and I were saying, well, maybe we should just get off and enjoy this stop ourselves. And we thought, no, we better bring the cameras, we better shoot it, just in case, because you never know. And we got in there, and there was all these guys that were stationed there. So we went in and interviewed them, talked to them, shot some of the best pictures that we got were all on that very first day, because then after that, like I said, we didn't make as many of the stops as we were supposed to. So thank goodness we had that piece of the story, because otherwise we'd never gotten it, because we never were able to get off at Polymer Station, which was the main place we were supposed to get off and meet people. So this group of Polish scientists that happened to be down there was totally a mistake, or at least not planned on our part, and became a big part of that first story. Lots of people have been everywhere in the world. I mean, as far as, I've had a chance to go to 14 different countries. We've traveled a lot for around the States and everything like that. But going to Antarctica is extremely rare. And I mean, of all the continents I've set foot on, at least I got the hardest one done. I got 3 more to go, but those are all attainable. This one was just a unique experience, and it's kind of odd to think that we actually were able to do something like that and be able to get down there.
Yeah, if you can.
Too bad it didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to.
I know. Well, if you could do Antarctica, you can do a story anywhere.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It was such a unique experience.